So today what we are going to learn is how to convert quadratic equations from vertex form to standard form by hand. So what vertex form is it's always in the form there's a number with parentheses, squared, and a number behind it. So from the very first couple of days in this chapter, we learned about the vertex. If you were to take a graph of a quadratic function, it makes this shape called a parabola. The vertex of a parabola is the number at the very bottom. It's the point at the very bottom of this parabola. This is opening upward, so my vertex is the point at the bottom. If this was opening down, the arrows were pointing down, the vertex is the top of the graph. So in this example, my vertex is this ordered pair right here. So let's say, for example, that's the number 2 comma negative 3. So that vertex could be written in vertex form, where this is the H and this is the K. The X is always labeled H and the Y is always labeled K. So you can take those numbers and plug them in for H and K, and that's how you would write an equation in vertex form. So in this first example, the numbers there we go. Okay, so the numbers, this number here and this number here would make the vertex. But what we learned is that it's always the opposite of the H. So in number 1, the vertex of the graph, you change the sign for the first number, and then you write the second number exactly as you see it. So if you were to graph this quadratic function right here, if you were to put this into Desmos and graph it, you would see a graph where the vertex goes to the right 1 and down 6. It would look something like this, right 1 and down 6. Okay, so that's what vertex form does. Just as a review of why we have vertex form, is because it tells you the vertex without even having to graph it. So what we're going to do today is convert from vertex form to standard form. Standard form is written with a number in the front, that's the A with the x squared. Number in the middle, we call that B, and it's always with x. And the constant, or the number that's by itself, in the back. This is called standard form. Standard form has no parentheses. It has no fancy H or a K. It's just a number with x squared, plus a number with x, plus a constant in the back. So to be able to go from vertex to standard form, we're going to use these 3 steps. So step 1 says rewrite the binomial. What that means, I'll write the y equals in a minute. We're just going to focus on the right side. So this says x minus 1 squared. What we know about a squared, we learned in the last chapter, is that's the same as saying x minus 1 times x minus 1. And then in the back, there's a minus 6. So unit 7 and unit 8 were all of the skills that we had to be able to have to be able to use them in quadratics, which is this current chapter. So what we have to do next, step 2, we rewrote the binomial for step 1. So now step 2, double distribute. Double distribute means when we have 2 parentheses, we give this here. X times x is the number x squared. X times negative 1 is a negative 1x. And then we distribute this guy. Negative 1 times x is a negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. And then in the back, there's a minus 6. Okay, so now we have to combine like terms. These x's are like terms, so I'm going to clean those up first. This is x squared minus 2x plus 1. And in the back, I'm just going to bring down the minus 6, which was in the back of the original equation. Okay, so now my final answer, I'm going to put everything together. X squared minus 2x. A positive 1 and a minus 6 are like terms because they're both just regular old numbers. 1 minus 6, you can use Desmos if you need to, is the number negative 5. So my final answer is y equals x squared minus 2x minus 5. Okay, so we double distribute and then we combine like terms. So let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is a little bit more difficult. So let's try 2, and then we'll move through the next ones. All right, so number 2, it says rewrite the binomial. There's a 2. Then there's an x minus 3 and another x minus 3 because it's squared. Then there's a minus 4 hanging out in the back. Step 1, take care of your parentheses. We're going to double distribute. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is a negative 3x. That 3 is kind of ugly. I'm going to rewrite that. Okay, then I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to distribute. Negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is the number positive 9. Now I'm going to combine like terms. Negative 3x's and negative 3x's is negative 6x's. There's an x squared in the front and a plus 9 in the back. So I rewrote the binomial. I double distributed the binomial. So now I need to bring down the rest. There is a 2 in the front. So I'm going to put a 2 in the front. And then there is a minus 4 in the back. Okay, so I double distributed the parentheses. Then I brought down the 2 that was hanging out in the front, and I brought down that negative 4 that was hanging out in the back. So because this number has something in the front, I need to distribute that 2 to each term. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12x. 2 times 9 is the number positive 18. In the back, there's a minus 4. So my final answer is 2x squared minus 12x. These are like terms. 18 minus 4 is the number positive 14. So the correct answer is y equals 2x squared minus 12x plus 14. I'm going to put a y equals in the front of that. So in the original equation, why do we keep doing? Come back. The original equation had a y equals, so I put this back in the form with a y equals. Okay, so when you're ready, I want you to try number 3. Number 3 is set up just like number 1. So follow the steps in what we did on number 1. We rewrote the binomial, we double distributed, and then we add the number that's in the back. Number 4 is just like number 2. So I want you to use number 2 to try and solve number 4. We double distributed, we had to multiply the number that was in the front, and then add the number that's in the back. Combine like terms at the very end. Okay, so go ahead and try numbers 3 and 4. Not too bad. So that's how we do this by hand, converting from vertex form to standard form by hand, for examples. So now that you've done this by hand, we're going to go ahead and type this into Desmos, and you're going to be able to get the correct answer in the calculator. So what we know about Desmos is that it's super easy. In the first Desmos equation, all you have to do is type this in. When you type this in, you're going to get a graph. There we go. Once you get that graph in Desmos, you're going to go to the next one and type this in. Don't erase the original equation. Keep this one in the Desmos graph, but when you're ready, then type this one in. This will show up as another graph. What we're looking for is which one is the same. So A would not match the original graph when you plug it into Desmos, so A is not the correct answer. So when you're ready, I want you to try with B. So in Desmos, you typed in this original equation, and it showed up as a graph. If it doesn't match option A, this one did not match the original, so A is not the graph. So you're going to try the same thing with B. Type this into Desmos, and see if this graph sits right on top of that original graph. The original graph piece is down. I'll make this look more accurate. Your original graph actually would look like this. You might have to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so when you type in type in B, see if this graph matches that graph. In fact, I'll make it a little bit more accurate. Maybe like this. If option B matches the original graph, then B is the correct answer. I would show you it, but my internet is a little tricky today. So if you have questions, ask your teacher. Super easy. So go to number 7 when you're ready. Oh, let's go to 6. In option 6, same thing. Type this into Desmos exactly like you see it. To click the square button, if you don't know how to find this in Desmos, you open the Desmos keyboard. There's a little like icon at the bottom that looks like a keyboard. And then in the keyboard, there's a little thing that says A to the B. You can use that one, and that will raise it. So you can type a 2 into your power. Okay, so on number 6, you're going to type this into Desmos, and it's going to give you a graph. That graph will look something like this. Then you're going to type in option A. Keep the original, then type in A. If this graph matches the original graph, and by matches I mean sits right on top of it, then it has to be the correct answer. Okay, so when you're ready, try number 7 and number 8. You type the original one into Desmos, then you type in A. If they match, that's the answer. If they don't match, type in B. If they still don't match, type in C. Okay, so you guys know how to convert from standard form to vertex form by hand and using Desmos. So when you're ready, we have one more piece to learn. We're going to do the same thing here where I'll show it to you by hand, and then you'll type it into Desmos and do it that way. So the way to do standard to vertex is a little bit more difficult because it requires a bit more math computation. So I'm going to do the first 2 with you, and then you're going to try 3 on your own, and then we can go down to learn how to do it in the calculator. Okay, so in this first one here, what it says is, when you're given a vertex and a point, you plug them into vertex form and you solve for A. So we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the video. So what this means is that my vertex is always HK. So I label an H for my 5 and a K for my 3. The point is always X, Y. An ordered pair, or a point, coordinate point, is always X and then Y. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plug in all of these numbers into this equation. We don't want standard form. Standard form does not help us here. Nothing is labeled ABC. So we use vertex form because we've got an H, a K, an X, and a Y. So what vertex form says is we start with the Y. The Y number is -1. Then there's an equals. Then there's an A. I don't have an A in any of these numbers, so I put the letter A here. Then there's an X. I do have an X. X is 6. And there's a minus sign. And then there's an H. I do have an H. My H is a 5. And then the back it says plus K. So I'm going to put plus. Then my K number is a 3. So I plug in X, Y, H, and K. So now I just solve for A. So this leaves me with a -1 equals A. We do parentheses first. 6 minus 5 is the number 1. And then there's a plus 3 in the back. So this A is attached to the 1, so it's got to stay there. So my next step is to move the constant or the number by itself. So if this is plus 3, I'm going to subtract 3. A -1 minus 3 is the number -4. -4 equals A times 1. The way to undo multiplication is to divide. So I divide by 1, and I divide by 1. So my final answer is that A equals -4 divided by 1 is the number -4. So now I'm going to rewrite this in vertex form. So vertex form is y equals, I found out what A is -4, parentheses, x. I know what H is the number 5, and then plus K. I know what K is 3. So this is the final answer. Now it's written in vertex form. Vertex form means there's a number in front of parentheses, a number behind the X, and a number in the back. This is called vertex form. Very mathy. So those of you guys that like number crunching, this isn't too bad. I'll show you how to do it in the calculator in just a second. So when you're ready, let's do one more together, and then you can try one on your own. Let's do number 2. Okay, step 1, label H, K. Your vertex is always the H and the K. That would be the ordered pair at the bottom of your graph. The point is your X and your Y. I'm going to plug this all into vertex form. I'm going to move up a little bit. Here it is. Vertex form says, start with the Y. My Y value is the number 7. Then it says equals A, parentheses. Then it says take your X. My X number is a -2. Then there's a minus sign. Then it says H. My H value is -4. Oh no, I messed that previous one up. Whoops. Vertex form has a square in it. My bad. Sorry, guys. So that means that there was a square out here. Fortunately, 1 squared is still just 1. That doesn't change the answer. There's a square on here. So the correct answer for the previous one is -4, parentheses X minus 5, squared, plus 3. The numbers didn't change because 1 squared is still 1. Sorry, now that I remember how to math, we'll make sure we write that correctly. So vertex form, Y equals A, open parentheses, X minus my H value, close parentheses, squared, plus K. My K is the number 5. So now I clean it up. 7 equals, no clue what A is, so I put an A there. Let's make these all the same color. Open parentheses. Minus negative is the same as a plus. -2 plus 4 is the number 2. 2 raised to the second power is 2 times 2, which is a 4. And then there's a plus 5 in the back. So we had to clean up what was inside parentheses. -2 plus 4 was the number 2. It's raised to the second power. 2 to the second power is the number 4. So now to solve this, I move the 5 minus 5 minus 5. 7 minus 5 is the number 2, equals A times 4. My last step to get A by itself, this is A times 4. To undo multiplication, we have to divide by 4. 2 divided by 4 is the number 1/2. You can plug that in a calculator to help you reduce if you need. So my A equals 1/2. So my final answer is Y equals, my A is what I just solved for, so you put that first, parentheses, X minus, my H is negative, so that's a -4, close parentheses, squared, plus K. Minus negative is the same as rewriting it as a positive. So this is my final answer for number 2. Label HKXY. Plug that into vertex form. Don't forget your square like I did. Whoops. Make sure that square is there. And then you get your final answer. So when you're ready, go ahead and give me number 3. See if, where did it go? That's not a good thing. Where did this go? Converting would be the letter C. Here we go. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we are now ready for number 3. Go ahead and try number 3, converting from a vertex and a point. This is how you write the equation in vertex form. All right, when you're ready, on number 4. So number 4, what you're going to do, this is how we do this in Desmos. Your teacher can help you with Desmos once you get to this one here. So what we do is we go to the y equals. Every time you see y equals, you plug this into Desmos. So you're going to plug in y equals x squared minus 5x. The way that we check a table on Desmos, we're looking for the ordered pair 2, -4 and 3, -3. So on your Desmos screen, you typed in y equals x squared minus 5x. And then it gave you the graph of this equation. It looks something like this. Okay, so now to be able to check the ordered pairs, there's a little button. It's called a cog, or the settings symbol. So you click that button, and then you click the little table. Okay, so it's like a little spiky flower thing right here. So click that button, click the table. A table will show up. You're going to check, does 2 go with -4? It should. Does 3 go with -3? It should. If it doesn't, the answer is not A. I will tell you right now, the answer is not A. Okay, so when you're ready, do the same thing here. Type this into Desmos. Click the little spiky sun, called a cog or a settings button. Then click the table, and then check your table. When the x is 2, is the y -4. When the x is 3, is the y -3. Okay, so that's how we can check using Desmos to go to Vertex Form. So when you're ready on number 5, same thing. Type this into Desmos. Click the button that looks like this. Click the table. And then check. Does -6 go with 1 on the table? Does -3 go with 4 on that table? If it does, then you're good. If it doesn't, then try B. Okay, so that's how we can check these using Desmos. And that is everything for today. It's a little bit more difficult of a lesson. So you saw how to do this by hand, and then you saw how to do this in Desmos. On your test next week, you can choose which way you want to do it. If you want to solve in the calculator, or if you want to solve by hand, that is A-OK.